The French Model 1935A pistol is actually fairly uncommon for a modern semi-automatic. Not a lot of the guns were sold as surplus. So when you see them, you'll realize that there's some things here that apply to other pistols, in particular the SIG P210.
By the early part of the 1930s, the French were still using a Nagant-type revolver that they'd adopted in 1892. It was well made, durable, but it was obsolete by the 1930s. The French had some experience with auto pistols during World War I. They used all sorts of different types of Spanish guns. They even used Colt 1911 government models. They purchased some from Colt. So they were comfortable with auto pistols. The French decided it was time for them to get with the program and adopt an auto pistol. In 1935, they began a series of trials which ran until 1937, testing a variety of different auto pistols, eventually settling on one designed by a Swiss designer, Charles Petter.
What Petter did was he really went to John Moses Browning's Model 1911, tried and true, still works today, and copied a lot of that, but he made some improvements along the way. Did away with the barrel bushing, he elongated the recoil spring guide, if you're familiar with the way Model 1911 works and a slide comes back and when it goes forward, strips around off and a toggle link and so forth, it's pretty much the same. Except the French version doesn't carry that big 45 ACP slug. It fires a 7.65 long cartridge, which is practically impossible to find today. If you do own one and want to shoot it, good luck in finding ammunition for it.
The Model 1935A was chambered for the 7.65 French long cartridge. It had an 8-round magazine at a barrel length of just under 4.5 inches, and it weighed just over 1.5 pounds. The gun wasn't in production for all that long before the Battle of France hit, and the Germans, like they do in so many other places in Europe, they immediately adopt the production line of the Model 1935A to serve their own purposes. And in German service, the Model 1935 is relabeled to be the Pistola 625F, the F standing for French. And the Wehrmacht end up having more guns made during their time in control of the factory than the French ever made before the war. But once World War II ends and the French regain control of the factory in Alsace, they start cranking these guns out again because they need to re-equip their military.
After the war, the Swiss industrial group, SIG, looks at it and said, well, we'd like to buy some rights to manufacture that. And so they start manufacturing it. And when it becomes Sig Sauer, basically the same pistol becomes the Sig Sauer 210 that we know today.
It's interesting in the death of colonialism that happens after World War II. The French, of course, fight for Indochina, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and they lose, but the moss is there. So you end up with mosses being used against the Vietnamese, and then the guns that are left there end up being used against American forces once the United States enters that conflict. So in our museum, we have a gun that's basically a 35A, made by hand, for the struggle against the French and the Americans in Indochina. And it's one of those things where the gun has very distinctive lines. Even though it's based on Browning principles, even though it's a very conventional looking handgun, it's got a little French style to it. It's a handsome gun. And when the Vietnamese went to copy a gun, that's the gun that they had to copy.